Yes, people, welcome back to United State of Mind, State of Play Part 3. This time we're discussing Ineos, the Ineos way. Now, I think we've had a lot of time to be able to look at what they've been able to do since coming into the club. And so, with the international break here, and to close off this little mini series here about State of Play um, of the club, to speak about the people that have come in and, reshape the sporting direction, it's an important thing to do. And so I'm going to kind of break down the arrival, the initial uncertainty surrounding them coming in, the new setup that we have in place, how they're operating or how they operated so far, and why I think we should trust them as fans moving forward. But before we do anything, people, and before we break this down, make sure you're hitting the like button, hit the subscribe button as well. If you're new, hit the notification bell and all of that good stuff right there. And let's begin. So, let's talk about the arrival. Obviously, it got to a point where there were two rival bids. Obviously, Sheikh Jassim, the Qatari businessman, and then Ineos, kind of headed up by Sir Jim Ratcliffe. Now, I was always leaning towards the Ineos side because I felt like the Qatari bid from Sheikh Jassim was kind of like screaming vanity project for me, right? He was talking about, I have 8 billion, I've got 5.5 for the club, and I've got the rest of the money for everything else. And I'm like, one, whilst 5.5 billion is nothing to, you can't say no to no 5 billion, right? But I think for the Glazers, that's a bad business move, right? Because you could take that money and run, but when you've got a club that generates so much money and you have a stake in it, or you have a majority stake in it, and you're making money year in, year out, something that you can pass down generation to generation, you're never going to let that go. And I feel like people just don't understand that. Like, if you're a business person and you have an asset that's so valuable like this, no matter what, people, it's priceless in a sense, right? No one can offer you the amount of money for you to let go of it. So Jassim coming in and saying that he could do all of this and that just screamed vanity, because there was no like plan after that. It was just like, I'll buy it, and then what are you going to do with it? Like, you have to put in the structures in place to be able to make sure that it actually performs the way that you think or you want it to be. So I was kind of turned off by all of that. Like, and I was like, there was a lot of mystery and, stuff surrounding him, like I joke about like, who is Sheikh Jassim? Like, you know what I'm saying? You type his name in Google, there's like 3 different pictures of the guy, and it's like, bro, who is it? So I feel for me, I'm at that place now where I was comfortable seeing Ineos come in because they had the right messaging coming through, and the way that they structured the deal, like they kept changing the structure of the deal to be able to suit what the Glazers were looking for. And the fact that they was able to come in and also say, hey, we want control of sporting affairs, right? And they already have a history of doing it with their 2 previous clubs that they have as under their umbrella. Why would the Glazers say no? You can make a compelling argument to say, yeah, we actually know what we're doing, or we have an idea of what we're doing, so we should take over it. And the fact that they've come in and said, this is what we want to do from the start, it's a great thing for a fan to see that, especially one that's well informed, one that actually cares about what happens off the field that affects things on the field. So like, they've arrived at the start of this year, and they've gotten straight to work. Like, I'm sure when they arrived, there was a lot of uncertainty at the club. So, like players, non-playing staff, and the manager and the coaching staff would have all been on edge because they didn't know what this new arrival for the club meant. The control of the sporting direction would have meant, like big changes potentially, not right at that particular moment, but definitely in the summer. And you can see that now. Unfortunately, some United non-playing staff are being made redundant, and that's difficult because you're having conversations, you're going through consultations, and all of these types of things before eventually parting ways with these some of these staff could be like long-term type of staff. And then at the same time, you've got like uncertainty with players, like because players' contracts are now at a certain point, and there may be a freeze on renewing contracts and things of that nature. And so decisions are being made there. So some players' futures aren't secure, so they have to figure out what they need to do moving forward. And then you're looking at the manager and the coaching staff and what could potentially happen there, because now, in my mind, I'm thinking new owners, or they're not owners, new people in charge of sporting control. will come in, and in my mind, they would want their own person, instill their own person that is aligned with their values and how they want to do things moving forward. And so there'll be uncertainty with the manager and the coaching staff. But putting that aside, let's talk about the new setup that is now coming into place for Ineos, right? So you've got obviously Sir Jim Ratcliffe at the top, and I'll put a graphic on the screen for people, but I'm just reading this from my phone. You've got Jean-Claude Blanc, and then Sir David Brailsford, right? I always thought that Sir David Brailsford is very key to monitoring performance of the overall kind of like team, and when I say team, his team as in Ineos, and then obviously United as itself, the playing side, because he was one of the, and if people don't know, he was one of like the very people that was instrumental in British cycling becoming like British cycling becoming one of the top like countries in the sport of cycling, right? So he's overseen so many things like that has helped the Great Britain get like the one domestic success and international success, global success in Olympics and things like that. He's been instrumental in that, and so having someone like that at the club allows for there's an infinite level of possibility that United could also end up being back at the top of the table with him kind of overseeing certain things, certain aspects, performance-wise. So that was always an underrated type of thing. Like, we'll have his knowledge and expertise about how he can transform, small elements of our performance that will kind of drive bigger changes, essentially, right? And then we're looking at the club side now. We're looking at just give me 1 second. So we've got Omar Barada coming in from City, coming in as a CEO. Jason Wilcox coming in from Southampton as the technical director, and then Dan Ashworth as the director of football. So, you've got Barada, who obviously is, been a part of City's success over the last several years, and he jumped at the chance to come and be a part of this at Ineos, like having the position because he was the chief financial officer at City. He's coming into the executive position at United. So it's a challenge for him, and he's one that he wants to take on. And you can see from the way he speaks, the messaging behind what he's saying, right, is what we need behind the scenes at United. Obviously, Dan Ashworth, there's been a lot of talk about who should be the director of football, who's got the expertise, who's the best one in place. But when you have somebody as experienced as him and knows what he's been doing this for a very long time. It's like, come on, like, he's probably the best person you get for the job. And obviously, he kind of was held up because of the compensation stuff and all of that. But the fact that he joined and wanted to join is another good thing. And then obviously Jason Wilcox, who was going to be the director of football at Southampton, or either he was instilled or he was going to, and he decided to part ways and join Manchester United as a technical director. And he's going to be really involved in the playing side of things. How do we play? How do we set up? Game by game, working with the manager, being that bridge, right? Where, he can come in and tweak things and like help support the manager so that if things aren't going the way that they're supposed to be going, they can liaise and understand what needs to be done to be able to make the changes that's needed. And I think that's another underrated thing, especially the fact that once again he wanted to come to Manchester United. And then you've got Christopher Vivell, who's had extensive experience in terms of recruiting and scouting players, specifically in the RB group, specifically for Leipzig anyway. Him coming in as like kind of like the head of global recruitment, essentially. Him coming in and his expertise will allow us to maybe, lay some ground in the scouting network that, he had like a lot of access to whilst he was part of the Leipzig kind of situation, right? And so he's had a key part in bringing in some of the players already that we've seen in terms of new signings. So I'm excited to see what he can do, because apparently his contract has been extended beyond into the January window. So if we need to make some additional signings, there may be some signings for the future, or some that might be needed right now that he could maybe work his magic in terms of recruitment. So that's also good as well. And then below that, you've got Erik ten Hag, instilled as manager. We know about Ten Hag. We don't need to say anything. Surprisingly, Ruud van Nistelrooy, who was a head coach last season at PSV, joining United as a coach, and Rude, I love Rude, my favorite Manchester United player of all time. Surprising that he's coming in as a coach. Now I think it's interesting. There's a potential. He's there. If things don't work out with Ten Hag, you've got a manager that you can just bring right in there. And then his expertise in terms of his position on the pitch, can he help that young forward line? Because we've got a pretty young forward line. Apart from Rashford, you take him out of it, it's a pretty young forward line. Can he help them develop their games in terms of goal scoring and stuff like that? I wonder how far reaching his role can be, because he's an assistant, but what else is he going to be offering? And then you have Rene Haka. I don't know if I said his name right, Hake or Haka, but him coming in from being head coach at Go Ahead Eagles in the Netherlands. I don't know much about him, but I feel like I trust Ineos in terms of the decision making to be able to extract him from where he was and to bring him into the coaching situation at Manchester United. So that's pretty interesting, and that's the setup right there. Now, how has all of that as a collective operated so far? I mean, doing their reviews during the tail end of last season when they joined, right through to the end of the season and in the summer. Like, I feel like we can trust them based off the window that they had. Like, it was very extensive. You can see we're operating very differently in the transfer market than we have done in all of the previous years we've had post Fergie, where we're not being bullied by selling clubs in terms of paying like really extortionate prices, really negotiating the deals down to the respectable level that we expect them to be. And there's examples. The Ugarte one is a very interesting one, right? Where PSG had made indications that this player is no longer part of our plans, and United steadfastly made sure to explore all options before parting with any money on the signing. I think an initial 42 million plus the add-ons, and then maybe they're very like hard add-ons to achieve, will mean that we may just be playing that fee for him, for a player that they invested close to 60 million, just a year before. The Euro signing is a big indicator as to where we're going. Like you're trying to invest in young players early, really talented players, and if you need to potentially break the bank, you do so. But the fact that we've done it against, like, people will say, a club that is on a different stratosphere to United where they are right now, Real Madrid, the fact that we've been able to secure his signature ahead of Real Madrid is a big way and a big change in the way we're operating, especially in the transfer market. I think that, the fact that we're going to go back to some of these unknown young gems that potentially are, the fact that we're facilitating it is interesting, because I feel like United have always scouted young players and they've always like had interest in young players, but they haven't been able to necessarily, secure the signing. So the one that comes to mind is Caicedo. The fact that we didn't make that signing early on and integrate him into the team when the price was so cheap. Maybe we're now operating in a different way when you're seeing the likes of Sekou Kone coming in and then Obi Martin coming in, where we're trying to secure the services of young players who maybe not as much known about them except for the people that maybe watch them regularly. But them coming in early and integrating them into a situation where they could be fast-tracked into the first team in a couple of years' time means that we're operating in that in a new realm where we're now facilitating the deal for young players and taking the risks where they could work out and they might not, but at least you're taking the risk because you want to be able to explore. And then obviously behind the scenes, like even beyond behind the scenes, like just looking at the infrastructure for men's team, women's team in terms of their training grounds and their training facilities and trying to improve on those things, looking into the stadium and how we can improve that, because Old Trafford is old. It's legendary, but it's old, right? And so are we going to revamp it? Are we going to build a new one? Who knows? But at least we're exploring that, because that was something that wasn't happening under the Glazers. They were happy to see the iconic stadium rot to the point where it needs to rot and make little changes that were just patching things up. But yeah, that's how they operate. And lastly, we're going to just talk about why I think we should trust them, right? I feel like what they've done so far has been able to, for me, at least instill some trust into the plan that they had before even coming in. It's really going to be a long-term process. And I mentioned this previously in the video. If we want to get back to the top of English football, we just need to be patient. It seems to me that they've got the right team working behind the manager that's going to help us have the platform for success. Whether that manager and the players surrounding that will be there to be able to see through the whole thing, probably doubtful. There will be tweaks, there will be changes, but as long as there's continuity within that, that's fine. As long as we start to reverse some of the wrongs that the Glazers have done, like looking at the new stadium, working on our facilities, continually putting our markers down as we are Manchester United again, I think that's enough to trust them. I think even off of one transfer window, you can see that the way they're operating gives you enough to say you can trust them. People were very doubtful of them coming in, but you can see what they're trying to do. But that doesn't mean that they're not going to make mistakes. Players will make mistakes, managers will make mistakes, coaching staff will make mistakes, the owners or people in charge of the sporting direction will make mistakes. That's normal, it's natural. You're not going to tell me that you don't make mistakes. We all make mistakes. I make mistakes. So they're going to make mistakes, but you have to trust that through those mistakes they learn, and then they'll be able to right the wrongs of those mistakes that they've made. And so that's really that's it in terms of like why I think we should trust them. And I think if you go back to the video that I spoke about, I go in a bit more detail of just like what is the journey going to look like for United going back to the top, especially on the playing side, which will kind of affect everything else that happens behind the scenes anyway. But yeah, people, that is it. That is part 3 of State of Play. Thank you, and thank you as always for tuning in. And if you do, make sure you're hitting that like button, subscribe button as well if you're new. Make sure you share this out with your friends and family. Make sure you're hitting that notification bell so that you know when I'm going live or if I'm dropping more content and stuff like that. And stay tuned for more content on Pros Only Sports, more United State of Mind as well. And we'll be back with something new very, very soon, people. So make sure you stay tuned. Peace.